Here we are in my backyard with Johnny Bolster and Carl Majewski.
There you go.
All right.
And who needs a gym when you got pruning?
That's right. All those muscles. So we're going to be doing some spring pruning today. These guys have quite a bit of information to pass along to you. We're going to talk a little bit about tools, sanitizing your tools, the tree, what cuts to do, why it's important to do it at this time of the year. There's all kinds of information we're going to get to today, and all of this is going to be in a half an hour. So I'm going to let these guys start talking a little bit. Yeah. Oh, did you want to go do a marathon or something? Yeah. So we're going to start talking and see where we go from there. So do you want to start with sanitizing tools or prepping, or what kind of tools you want to use?
Well, sure. We cover the tools themselves first, and then
Yep.
Yeah.
So, well, for me, if I can just go, a lot of I would say that probably 80% of the pruning that I do would be with these, a pair of loppers. You can make small cuts with it, of course, but you can also make some pretty big cuts with it as well. I would say anything, up to inch or two in diameter, you can handle with this. And I look for loppers that have I prefer wooden handles. They make them with steel handles or fiberglass, sometimes, or aluminum handles. Those aren't always quite as strong. So I go for that.
And you can get quite a leverage with these.
You can.
Yeah, and that's what I like, because you can feel it when you get a nice clean cut.
Yes.
It's like butter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes with those aluminum handles, you get better leverage than you think, and it'll, if you try and make too big a cut, you'll bend them
right
in half.
Yeah. So you have to be careful how strong you are.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yep. So that's Carl's favorite. And for you, Johnny, what?
My favorite tool?
For your favorite
what I like
tool.
to use? Well,
yeah.
I use this saw. This is known as a Japanese arbor saw. I can go through things that people might need to use a chainsaw to cut. This thing is extremely sharp, and you can easily cut yourself. So a word to the wise on safety is just you always want to be aware of where the teeth are going.
So this might not be a family activity.
No, not to be done without parental supervision.
Right.
Certainly,
right.
At the very least.
Right.
With any tool, it's really important, especially if you're dealing with a lot of different trees, when there's a lot of disease out there, it's easy to spread it around. Just like a surgeon, it's really important to keep their tools clean. It's really important to keep our tools clean, just so that we don't do harm, basically. And I just simply use isopropyl alcohol. There's some people that, schools of thought that suggest bleach. That's really problematic, not very good for the tree that you're cutting into, of course, and bleach your clothes and all sorts of things. So it's much easier. Just use a little, this is a 91% isopropyl alcohol. Put it in a spray bottle, so it's real convenient, and I just give it a couple little spritz on either side, and that'll pretty much sterilize anything that might have hung out there from the last cut.
Yep, cool. All right, well, what other tools might you use for this project here?
Okay, another pair of tools is just a simple pair of snips. It's like the mini loppers, basically. And
is that like Cindy?
I was just thinking Cindy Lop, the mini Cindy, the Cindy Lop. It's real important to keep these nice and tight. The main deal with that is if the blade and the little under jaw of sorts become splayed, then the cut will not finish well, and you end up with some strange peeling that can occur. So good to keep these nice and sharp, oiled up, and again, a little bit of isopropyl alcohol keeps it from.
And what I've seen on you is the way that you're holding them. I mean, you could hold it the other way, but you want this side here, I think, in your palm. So I don't know if you guys can see it at home, but the movable part is the part that's on the bottom.
Sure. It kind of depends. You're gonna it depends on how you're going in at the branch. It's best to keep. I tend to want to keep the blade as close to the collar as possible. There's other parts about it. You'll just play it by, kind of get good at it after a while. But if you're trying to make a cut and you're going with the grain, if you have the blade on top and you're doing that, it's going to tend to want to make it splay out, and that's where you end up making an ill cut. So you'll just play around with that a little bit, just kind of getting it so that you end up with that nice clean snip right at the end. Of course, leverage is important. Keeping a larger branch close to the inside and your hands further out is going to increase the leverage that you'll have and make it easier to cut. And then if you're dealing with a branch that's big and you're out on a, you just can't get it with one hand, a good way to do it is just put a little bit of pressure against the blade, or I should say with the blade, and that's just going to make it slice through so much easier.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So just
because it's not something that's going to really be that hard to do. It's just a matter of having the right tools and knowing how to cut.
Yeah, knowing the material of the wood and knowing how the tools
knowing
work
the
with
tree.
that. And knowing the tree.
Right. And then you have another tool here, Carl.
Right. This is a pole pruner.
And I don't know if they're going to be able to see it because actually the camera's kind of close. So
okay. So
we'll bring it down a little bit there. Yeah.
We bring it down here. It's kind of a combination of a lopper and a saw. So I mean, obviously you've got the saw blade here, and then you've got a blade here, and then by pulling on the rope.
So you've really got two ways of cutting. You've got this lopper here, and then you've got the saw.
And of course, you've also got 6 feet of pole ahead of you. So it's a great way to make cuts way up in the tree without having to get up in a ladder or things. And when you're on the ground, that's the safest. So it can be a handy way. It's a really handy tool.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful day. We're in March. It's a little early this year, so the buds are just about popping. It is, as I said, a beautiful day. I think you guys should probably get to work here before the sun goes down.
A couple of things that Carl and I were looking at were some of the branches that are a bit low to the ground to begin with. These, as you know, if you ever bumped your head while you're trying to go around the riding lawnmower or something like that, can be a real pain. You should take it as a case-by-case basis. It depends on the production of that particular branch and the height of it and so forth. But we kind of determined that it may be worthwhile to just take this right off at the base here. It's always good to be conservative. You could always take off more later. And just looking at this, I noticed that this branch right here has some nice growth on it. It's young, a lot of solid buds coming off there. So it might be a better option to just take it back here a bit. Take off this limb entirely, and then allow these water shoots that are coming out here a couple of years to mature, and perhaps take it back incrementally from year to year.
Okay. Well, I'm going to let you guys get started on this.
Okay.
And I'll be behind the camera for a while, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
All right.
One of the things that we noticed when looking at the tree is that there's a couple of areas where the branches are really dense, and you want things to be spaced out nicely so that you get good sunlight penetration throughout the light canopy, and you've got room for growth and good air circulation. So this branch here is a good example of something that's pretty busy, and so we need to do some thinning in there. And let's see. For this, I think we can use the pole pruners just because it's too high up to reach with the loppers or the saw by itself. But with just getting a little bit of height, I think we can get it. The best candidates for thinning are those where you're seeing like some old wood, maybe some dead or decayed wood in there, any obvious insect damage or physical injury or anything like that. If everything looks like it's reasonably healthy, then it doesn't matter as much what you take out, just that you thin it out. But here there are a few branches that aren't as healthy as they could be, and so that's what we're going to take out.
All right, there's a few things that we're going to take out here. The vertical growth is just heading for the sky. It wants all the sun, but those vertical growths are not going to be producing a lot of fruit for a while. So we'll just go ahead and take those out in favor of the ones that are down below. Now, it can be a real pain in the butt when you got a low branch like this and you're trying to navigate around, let alone trying to mow the lawn. So it's worthwhile to take just a moment when you're trying to move in and just get any obstructions out of the way. And this is a branch that doesn't have a lot of life in it, and there's another one over here that we'd rather favor. So I'm just going to do a quick cut on this. Again, it's really important to kind of be conscious of where the growth rings are, because that's where the healing can happen best. So I'm going to make a slightly angled cut coming back to the notch of this tree here. And again, supporting the weight of the branch is really important so that it doesn't peel off accidentally. All right. Now, with that out of the way, I can easily bring the ladder into position. And in this case, even though some of these upward growths are kind of large, I'll be able to get away with using a pair of pruners by using that technique I talked about earlier.
That's good idea.
Again, looking at accessibility in this tree is really important. This is a branch that's kind of growing across the center. It could be a really good fruit producer, but it's kind of in my way right now. So if I have enough patience as a pruner, I might just say, okay, I'll just tuck it out of the way for now. You know, save it for later. Not make a reactionary decision. I mean, it's a good plan. Now that I can get into these upward growths, I'm just going to show you what I mean by kind of pushing away from the blade. I'm going to press the blade in as far as it can go comfortably, and then just add a little bit of pressure away from the blade, and you'll see that it slips through quite nicely. Again, that cut that I made is just outside the collar, and I'll show you an example of where a cut that's made too far outside of a growth area can become a problem later on. Right here in this branch, we've cut off a large branch that grew out here, but just a little too far outside of where this little branch was. You can start to see that the bark had started to grow back over, but it was too far away from the original cut to maintain that area, and it's dried out, the bark is peeled away. So what we'll do in this case, since we have a nice branch coming out a bit lower, we're going to make a new cut and attempt to let that heal over once more. It's tricky to get the cut in there, tough angles and so forth. We want to make sure we don't harm the branch that we want to save at the back of the saw, because that can cut through at least the bark. One of the things I like to go in and do is take out any of the little pesky twigs that can hang up the teeth of the saw and misdirect the cut. Once those are out of the way, then I can get in there with the saw again. And learning my lesson from the last time we did this cut, I want to make that just about 1/8 of an inch outside of that growth area. Again, keeping a pretty sharp angle, but being mindful not to let the back of the saw hurt that branch. I'll start with a nice, gentle saw back and forth. I'm keeping my fingers on the edge of the saw blade so that I'm not letting it get anywhere near that branch. Just taking sort of short cuts like this is good so I don't gouge it into the main trunk. Oops. And once you got some teeth in there, you can really kind of start bearing down on it.
So that'll form a nice callus on that stump that'll heal over nicely. And this summer you might have some water sprouts coming out from that stump, but those are easy. Those are little tiny things that you can really just kind of rip out by hand.
I'm going to talk about that in a second.
Big enough diameter to make
There's
this a
ways to
little
fix
bit of
that.
work.
Hey Gene, you wouldn't happen to have any masking tape in the house, would you?
Actually, a little room like that I wouldn't worry about.
Okay. Well, I have read things that, like a little bit like that, if you literally just take a piece of masking tape, put it over it, it'll heal right back to the tree, and you won't end up with that little...
Right, but a little divot like that, I've seen on commercial orchards where they ding the hell out of their trees.
Oh,
and it's fine.
yeah.
So.
And it's easy, even if it's just a small piece like this, it's still easy to strip the bark off the back side. So you want to be really slow with those last couple of passes, making sure that you're keeping the weight off, kind of supporting the branch in place. And then, there we go. Cool. Nice finished cut.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. And now that we've got that cut, we're looking at what the ideal branch formation is on this. This one's coming out kind of off in this distance and at the base of this larger branch. So in this instance, I'm just gonna go ahead and snip that off so that this is where it's happening. And then this vertical growth, again, we're just gonna snip off just 1/8 of an inch outside the wrinkly part at the base of the branch, which is called the collar. And these you can feed to your rabbits. They like those. And now, as far as looking at this branch itself, so we can encourage it to go in the right direction, we're going to take off anything that's going down towards the earth. Once you can simulate the weight of the fruit just by putting a little weight on it like that and seeing what goes down. Anything going down should come off. So we're creating sort of a swoop upward with this. Any of these little buds can go, and that should do it. And over the next several years, you'll start to see this really fill out and turn into a nice pear-bearing branch.
What some people will do in order to make sure that it's growing at the right angle, you can either, some people will take like a stick and use it as a spacer to kind of hold it out this way. Another thing that people can do is tie a little weight to it. You know, I've heard of people take soda cans and fill them with cement or gravel or something like that, tie them to a string and then just have them hanging there. And that'll also bring it down and sort of train the branch in the right direction. But like you said, in this case where this particular branch is kind of long enough, I think as it grows out, when you get some new growth on the tips of it, that weight alone will weigh it down. So, you know, old orchardists have a saying that you can prune any time that the tools are sharp. So there's no time of year that's the wrong time to prune, insofar that you're not going to kill the tree by pruning it at one time of the year over another.
If anything, you're going to kill the tree by not pruning it when it needs it.
Right. However, I think a lot of people tend to prune in spring, and there are a lot of good reasons for that. One thing, Johnny and I were talking about this earlier, is that without having any leaves in there, you can get a good feel for the shape of the tree, and you can really clearly identify what needs to come out and what can stay. Whereas if this is filled with leaves, it shades things out. It makes it harder to see.
Also, since things are starting to just bud out, you can clearly see what's live and what's dead at this point. Right. So that makes it easier to know what should go, what should look and stay.
Right. And while you could prune earlier in the winter, there's also the risk of there getting a lot of winter injury in January and February, not this year, but if you prune too early, then you've kind of limited your options as to what you can take out, and if any of the remaining growth gets damaged by cold, then you're kind of stuck with it for a while. So here we've got a branch that's got a lot of low hanging branches. They're kind of oriented downward, and that's not going to be very productive. Plus it's kind of getting in the way of some of this other branch that we've already cleaned out. So there are all of these branches here that can come out, and it's a little crowded anyway, so it can certainly stand to be thinned out. So all I'm going to do is, with the loppers here, let's just make a couple of quick cuts. And I don't know, what do you think? This one too?
So this is opening things up quite a bit already.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's brighter in here already.
Yeah.
I can just kind of get that stump a little bit. There.
So Johnny, how did you get involved with this while Carl's cutting these things down?
Okay, I got into doing fruit tree pruning after being up in an orchard at a house where I was living. and nobody had bothered to do anything with it. So I just went online and read everything I possibly could, and there's just a wealth of information online about everything, but in particular pruning. Some great YouTube clips from people throughout the world who've been doing it for some time. And it's just a trial by error kind of thing, limiting the error as much as possible, of course. I recommend, if anyone's interested in getting into pruning, I run an organization called Locacopia, and we offer free clinics on pruning techniques and fruit tree care. Check us out. I would be happy to have you out to one of our clinics sometime, and you can have a little hands-on training.
So the other thing that we're going to do now is we're going to work on a little bit more of the deadwood, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. And this could take a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of times a tree that's been unattended, has grown for a while, has a lot of deadwood.
Yeah.
So that deadwood, you may think, well, it's dead. What do we need to worry about it? Well, it's like having hate to say it, it's like having a dead limb. Without cutting it off, it's going to cause a lot of problems down the road.
Right. And Carl, you've dealt with a lot of this through the UNH Extension Service.
Certainly.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about the UNH Extension Service.
Well, we're a branch of the University of New Hampshire, located right here in Keene, and I deal in agriculture. And we also have a lot of information on pruning. Our website is extension.unh.edu, and we've got all kinds of fact sheets that people can download on that. And we also put on our own pruning demonstrations as well. In fact, we've got one coming up on April 21st in Westmoreland, and anyone who wants more information can contact the office.
Yep.
And we'll fill them in on all the details.
Good. And so you do things throughout the year. So
yes.
If you don't happen to have met that workshop or gotten there, there's other workshops that you can attend as well.
Sure, and plenty of people just call me on the phone and say,
help!
help, and when it comes to pruning, I always tell people that it's nothing to be afraid of. That pruning is like a haircut. That if you do a bad job, it's just wait a little while and it goes away.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, generally speaking, a rule of thumb is any branch that's coming out of the base of another branch, like here when you have a sort of a fork, the lower branch should be taken off. Most of the time you're going to see that branch is dead because it's been shaded out by the others above. So I'm just going to take off these twigs in the way, and provided it's not too dead, I should be able to get my blade through here okay. Sometimes it's worthwhile taking a good grip on it. Couple of, and make sure you don't cut a branch that you don't need to cut out. Nice squeeze there. Actually, if you can just leave the weight just because it's binding the blade up. And then once you get it through part way, what I like to do is turn the blade at a 90-degree angle from where you'd made that cut before, and you can finish off the second half. Again, I'm just keeping it real close to that collar because that's the best place for it to heal. I'm going to come out here and see other examples of that. There's another spot where got some dead wood coming off of that other branch, and then this one is a little spud that's coming off there, but that's likely to be drawing the nutrients off of this branch as well. So it's like trying to take a river and channel all the water down one lane, one alley, so that you get the most out of it in the end. Any crossing like this, I'd like to take off so it's open, snipping all that off. But we're getting back to deadwood here, so I'm going to bring the ladder around to the other side now and take off a good branch that's can go.
You guys did an awesome job here. There's so much air. There's so much space here. Now, Carl and Johnny, what are your final recommendations? What were we looking for? Did we hit our goal?
I think we're well on our way.
Uh-huh.
What I do is when for any pruning job is that you take a step back and look at the overall picture. And what I do is kind of mentally make note of which limbs need to come out and get an idea for the overall size of the tree. And if you can do it in a few large cuts rather than a whole bunch of little cuts, I think that's better. It's easier, and you're less apt to cut something you wish you hadn't, I think.
Yeah, and so you at home can probably see the shape of the tree. It is coming along. There's a lot more light here, and you guys are well on your way to where you want to be. But what about the future? Where do we go from here?
Well, it's important to in any one year not to take out too much. About 30% is what Carl had recommended. And that 30% the first year should be dedicated to dead, diseased, and crowded limbs. The next 2 years are we're progressively clearing out the clutter, making it more airy in the middle, and then bringing the height down as well. Generally, you want to have a fruit tree not too much higher than about 15 feet tall. You can get at the most branches and fruit pretty easily with a small ladder that way. So
great. Well, thank you so much, Johnny and Carl. Again, you can contact the UNH Extension Office or Lococopia. They're both willing to help you. I'm sure that there's a lot of other people in the community that can help you as well. This has been great to learn about spring pruning, and I can't wait to work on my own trees. If you would like to contact us in my backyard, you can contact us at inmybackyardch8@gmail.com, and we'll get back to you if you'd like to be on the show, have any suggestions. We'd be happy, again, to talk with you and have you on, like Johnny and Carl. So anyway, please get a hold of them if you have any questions, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in my backyard.